I recently met His Excellency Jose Ramos Horta, the President of East Timor. We talked of Tony Stewart, the youngest of the Balibo Five, and his murder in the small crossroads town of Balibo, East Timor, on October 16, 1975. He was 21 years old. Events happened before I was born, but my parents had shared the story with me, knowing it through their friendship with Anne E. Stewart, younger sister of Tony and a well-known storyteller. Today, Anne is in the chamber as we head to the 50th anniversary of the murder of her brother and his colleagues. No one has been brought to justice or said sorry to the family in all this time. To honour her brother Tony and tell her family's story, she has published a collection of poems and prose, Crossroads, My Stories of Balibo. Almost every aspect of the events surrounding the murders, from the appalling duplicity of the Australian government's response to the devastating, lifelong consequences for that family, is detailed. It is moving and deeply disturbing. Anne E., a dear friend and the Shani, our nickname for grandmother, to my children, has written a moving account of small moments in time that tell the story and honour her brother. Quoting her parents, Anne shared that the only contact we had with the Department of Foreign Affairs was when some fellow rang up and said that he hoped we would realise we would have to pay for the body to be brought back to Australia. That just about finished us off. Tacit approval had been given by the Australian government to the invasion. In one of Anne's poems titled Gough, pompous, pissant Gough gave the green light to Suharto's invasion. We'll do absolutely nothing, as is quoted in the Sydney Morning Herald 3 days before the invasion. And here in the hallowed halls of Parliament, with its access to the National War Memorial, a quote from the poem entitled Family Law. We weren't told about his funeral until it was over. Anthony John Stewart, loved son of Noel and June, rest in peace, inscribed on the headstone in a Jakarta cemetery. Fake funeral held December 5th, 1975. Walcott and Whitlam's duplicity is part of our law. Buried, the charred remains of 5 men, collected from their hasty pyre in Balibo. Was it the square, the crossroads, or near the Chinese house, where they died? Days later, the fire. Like shards of pottery from an archaeological dig, their bones, remnants raked and shovelled together, only enough for one coffin. Years later, some of the families wanted to exhume those fragments of 5 lives. Mum said it's probably only chicken bones. She'd always wondered, reading the words of a World War I artist who'd written, the saddest thing on the battlefield was to hear grown men in their last moments crying out for their mothers. Was there a faint call in that crossroads town under the banyan tree? Mum, we have let this family down. It wasn't until 2007, as written in the poem Whispering Down the Line, the Truth. Pinch Deputy Coroner said deliberate. They weren't caught in crossfire as the Indonesians had proclaimed and the Australian government had accepted. From the same poem, in 2014, an invitation to a briefing with the Australian Federal Police, who announced they were abandoning the inquiry. After 1,868 days of gathering evidence, they had the names of those responsible for the slaughter, but hadn't interviewed one person in Indonesia. We were white with rage. I speak of this today to remind you of the importance of storytelling. Anne recorded many of my late father Rod May's stories, and if she hadn't, this knowledge would have been lost. But Anne assures me that amongst all of the clouds there have been rainbows. The East Timor Friendship Network has just celebrated 25 years. Old rockers, the Dili All-Stars, received the Order of East Timor. The work of the Balibo House Trust, the Boat World Music Community, who commemorated 50 years of Timorese refugees in Australia, and the Alma nuns who I've met and who have so much to teach us about gratitude and compassion. I'm thankful for Anne's moving testimony, which has uncovered the true story from inside a family who lost a beloved son and brother. With 50 to 60 wars happening across the world today, I think of the collective grief that so many have and will endure.